of Architecture, Planning, and Landscape. It's great to see you virtually today, and thank you very much for joining us. I wanted to let everybody know that we are recording this session so that people that are not able to join in today are able to get the information that they will need. I want to, as I'm sure I don't need to say it, we certainly have challenging circumstances since March, and those are going to continue into the fall. And we have been working collectively very hard to make sure that this is not something that will diminish our education, your educational experience or our teaching and research time, but will actually just provide us an opportunity to do things differently. And as you will learn, as you get more involved with design, disruption and change are often catalysts for positive action. And so the theme of our orientation this year is going to be from social isolation to collaboration. And I think that it speaks to the attitude with which we are approaching all of this. So while there may be a great many programs, academic programs across the university where this is going to be a very difficult situation, as designers, we look at challenges as opportunities, and we're going to see how we are going to make this into something that is much, much better than we could have imagined. I believe that all of the students will have had program-specific updates from our two associate deans, from Catherine Hamill, Associate Dean for Architecture, and Dr. Mary Ellen Tyler, the Associate Dean for Planning and Landscape. And so I won't be speaking today, and we won't necessarily be talking, although I think they're both on the call, we won't be talking about program-specific questions as much as more general things that have to do with all of across the universe, across the faculty. I wanted to give you a few updates and some direction on where we're going, and then spend the rest of the time on answering questions. And if there are questions that I can't answer, then I believe we have some faculty members and members of the leadership team, as well as some of the administrative staff on the call to be able to jump in and help me out if I am stumped by something. So I can't see you all, so I'm going to assume that someone is moderating the session and will bring questions to my attention, or if for some reason my connection goes down, or you can't hear me properly or whatever, I'll wait for, just barge in if something goes wrong. So what are we going to be doing in the fall? You probably know by now that the university is having a partial opening, and each department within the university was asked to develop a plan for how they would allow 15 to 20% of their student body on campus at any one time. We thought about that a lot, and we've made, I think, a very exciting proposal, or a plan that we're going to be implementing, that I think takes care of a variety of different needs, including international students who aren't able to come to Calgary, domestic students who for some reason aren't able to join us here, as well as students that are in Calgary who, for personal reasons, health, anxiety, don't feel comfortable coming into a collective setting, as well as those students who will be here. And so we've created a learning experience and framework that I think is going to meet everyone's demands. So the first thing that that I want to say and reinforce is that our program will be very effective whether you are distance learning or whether you are going to be in person there, and we will be able to accommodate everyone who cannot be on campus for whatever reason, as I mentioned above. The way that we're going to do that is that all of our courses are going to be taught online. And they're going to be, but they won't be taught asynchronously. There may be some components that will be taught asynchronously, but most of the classes will be taught synchronously and online. At the same time, that will accommodate everybody. At the same time, we are converting we have two facilities for those of you that are just going to be joining us. We have our regular campus building, the professional faculties building, and then we also have the City Building Design Lab downtown. What we're going to be doing is converting those spaces into student workspaces. And every student will have, that is in Calgary, will have access to a student workspace. In other days, we would have called that a studio space, but there's confusion around studio being a physical environment as well as being a class. And so for this period of time, we're going to be calling them workspaces. For those of you that have been with us for a year or more, you'll know you can just call them studios. But just for clarity, we're trying to learn how to say student workspaces rather than studio spaces. The reason that we did that is that in design schools, there is a great deal of peer-to-peer learning that happens outside of class time. You're sitting working on a project in a room, in a studio, say a collective studio workspace. It's the middle of the night, it's the afternoon, and your peers are all working on the same problem. And the opportunity to be able to talk, to be able to see what other people are doing, also the ability to be able to see what someone in a later year is doing is incredibly important as you start to learn about architecture, planning, and landscape architecture. In fact, some people, and I would subscribe to this as well, think that almost up to half of the things that you would learn in a design school come from that informal peer-to-peer relationships and learning rather than informal courses. It's why in all of the good design schools across the world, and we are part of that, that we strongly, strongly, strongly recommend, outside of this moment in time with COVID, that our students work in studio, work in these workspaces. This is not like a carrel in a library. It's a space where you complete your work and you're able to again have that kind of informal mentorship and discussions and learning. While we aren't able to do that for everybody, because some of you won't be in Calgary, for everybody that is, there will be a workspace made available for you. And I will say that that's rather exceptional within the landscape of Canadian design education at this time. Most of the schools are going completely online and are not having people working in their buildings. Some have a blended where some of the lectures and some of the courses are online and some of them are in place. We just made the decision that we value the student workspace, the studio, informal peer-to-peer experience so much that we are taking our allotment of time within the university at this moment of physical distancing and allocating it to that. So it gives you an idea of our priorities and what we expect from and what we hope that you will be you'll be learning. So we're going to be, with all of that said, anyone who is working remotely won't be disadvantaged from the coursework. It's a richer experience if you're actually able to be there, but we are also working on remote opportunities, opportunities for peer-to-peer time where that will be, and some of those issues will be ameliorated. Our instructors are reworking their classes, not just changing the delivery mode, but actually rethinking the nature of their coursework in order to make this year's educational experience the best that it can possibly be for you, our students. If you look at at the class schedule, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that yet, it will look very full. The reason for that is that it's accounting for all the studios and labs, the in-class and interaction time. And so I want to reassure you that you will not be on Zoom all of that time for 18 hours a day, or even 12 hours a day or 8 hours a day in your studies. For example, for our incoming students, you'll see that our studio courses are scheduled for 4 afternoons a week from, I believe it's 2 till 5 or 2 till 6, about 4 hours. In reality, you only attend 2 of those. The other 2 are set aside for work time. And then within that, depending on the way in which where the class is and the pedagogy of the instructor, students may get half an hour of individual, we call them desk crits, where you have a one-to-one opportunity for your instructor to sit and review your work and talk personally about that. So during that time, you would be able to attend other sessions from students. There's great value in that, to be able to see that, but also be able to get off of Zoom when and if. So there'll be lots of opportunities for you to, you're not going to just be sitting glued to your computer watching Zoom all day. As I mentioned, all the students that are here will have access to studio space. In order to meet the physical distancing requirements laid out by the university and the Ministry of Health, not everyone can be in the school at the same time. So we'll be balancing the classes where there'll be 3 days of access, 2 during the week and 1 on the weekend for half of the student body, and then the other 2 days and another day on the weekend for the other half of the student body. So, and we're still working out some various scenarios about whether that's, whether one cohort might be Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, and another cohort Thursday, Friday, Sunday, or whether we do Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, and then the weekends, or whether we take Sunday and shift it to Wednesday. We'll have to, we'll be working on all of that. We want to make sure that we're working hard to make sure that we get the best possible experience for you. We're also looking within that bifurcated scheduling that we will, in each studio grouping, we will have 2 years of students. So there'll be on, say, let's say we have the Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday group. That would mean that on the Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, there will be a junior class and a senior class in the same workspace, so that you'll be able to, particularly for the junior students, to be able to see what the senior students are doing, to be able to ask them questions about software, techniques, strategies, all of that kind of peer-to-peer learning, as I mentioned before. So I think what we're doing is recreating online as closely and in person as closely as possible this studio workspace experience. With that said, to reiterate, no student, no faculty member is going to be required to meet in person. You will be able to very successfully complete the program, complete the year, and have a very solid design educational experience if you are remote. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in a few minutes. I do want to make we've had a couple of comments about costs and tuition, and I realize that this is a difficult time, that there are limited financial situations that students are in, especially international students, because of higher tuition rates. But there's really nothing that the school, that we are, as much as we would like to, that our school can do to adjust those. Those are set. Those tuition rates are set by the Alberta government and the University of Calgary at the highest administration levels, has determined those tuition rates 12 months ago, and that we don't have any capacity to be able to change that. I will tell you that the analyses that have been done in multiple institutions, including ours, and that running a course online is actually slightly more expensive than running a course in person. So it's not like there's some massive cost savings that we are undertaking, because as you could imagine, as with most things in life, the majority of costs are personnel, faculty members, that sort of thing. The actual physical setting of the course isn't that significant a component of the of tuition costs. One of the benefits of being online, and this is something that we experienced at the end of last term when we were having our final studio review, is that being online allows us to expand our reach beyond Calgary for both studio instructors as well as guest lecturers, studio critics, review critics, that sort of thing. So we're working hard again to be able to capitalize on this opportunity to be able to bring in a much broader and richer group of instructional opportunities for everyone to be able to have. Another central component of a design school is making and workshops, and we pride ourselves in having a very extensive workshop, digital workshop as well as a conventional workshop, 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC, digitally controlled CNC machines, a whole range of different kinds of technologies. And students in all three of our programs use that technology in order to make physical models of their design projects. We are developing protocols right now where that will continue. What we're working on, what we believe is we'll be doing, because again, we can't all be working in the studio or in the workshop. That would be, the physical distancing would be too close. But what we'll be developing is a workshop, what we're calling workshop as a service, where students will be able to submit their digital files for 3D printing and laser cutting and CNC milling to the workshop, and those will be then fabricated by the staff, and we will supplement that as necessary with student proctors to make sure that we have a decent turnaround. And then they will be, the results of that will be set out, and students can come and pick them up from our workshops and then assemble them individually. For those of you that are going to be remote, either internationally or domestically, we will be providing a set of materials and lists and the kinds of tools that we'll be wanting you to use, and working to try to identify maker spaces in the cities in which you're located, so that you can set up a very, very similar kind of operation remotely, where you'll email your files somewhere, they will be printed, and then you'll come in and pick them up. Just looking through my notes to make sure that I have got everything that I've got. I think I've covered most of the things now. If I just go, there could be, actually maybe what we should do, I've been talking for 20 minutes. Maybe what we'll do is we'll open it up for questions. I see there's four comments in the chat. We can open it up to Q&A and have questions and answers. And then if we need to, we can go through some of the other things around orientation and that. But I think we've covered all of the major components at this point in time. So why don't I open it up, and Vita, Nicola, I'm not sure what the process is for answering questions, but I will, I'll leave it in your hands, and I'm now open and available to answer questions.
Sure thing. I'll run through the chat questions that have come in so far. We've got a question from Louisa saying, will thesis students be allowed to use our desks and computers in our office, even if only some days a week? Will we be allowed to have in-person meetings with our supervisors on campus?
Yes, so the answer to the first question is yes, all students in the faculty will have a workspace, and it will be part of that same process of on and off. We're working on how we distribute the spaces. We're trying to keep everybody in large spaces in order to make sure that we have adequate airflow for COVID safety. So we're not going to be using the small office spaces where students were working 2 and 3 at a time. Those probably won't be used. We want to try to keep everybody in the large spaces. In terms of meetings, the meetings will happen most likely online because there's no, or at least there's no guarantee that they will happen in person because faculty members may or may not feel comfortable meeting. Everybody is in this together in terms of people's capacity, both in terms of physical compromise as well as just anxiety and personal comfort in terms of meeting with people. And so I would assume, you should just assume that the meetings will happen online. Next question.
Okay. Next question is from Siobhan, and it's, is the plan to move to in-person classes for winter semester, or will that be decided later depending on public health orders, etc.?
Yeah, that's exactly what it will be. It will be decided, and that's not our decision. That's well, first of all, it starts with the Ministry of Health and the provincial government, and then that goes down to university administration will develop protocols, and then they will and guidelines, and then they will distribute those down to each faculty, where we then make our own determination about what it is. So our goal is to try to get back to the way in which we've operated for the first 50 years of our existence as quickly as possible, but we're going to make sure that above all we do it safely and that we also do it equitably. And so we're not going to be opening up until we know that everybody has the opportunity to be here, because we don't want to have an unequal learning opportunity.
Next question's from Madison. Will the workspace desks be shared, or will each student get their own?
Every student will get their own workspace desk, but as you could imagine, probably if you've been in a restaurant or other public gathering, they'll be set off. So every other desk will be for the person on the other days. So it's your desk, it's your space, nobody else is going to touch it. But when you're not there, then the 2 people on either side of you will be there. And when you're there, it'll be skip to desk. So it will be set up like that. And we are rearranging the furniture slightly to also then allow to make sure that there's the 2 meters of distance between those people that are there.
The next question is, can we, for those of us in Calgary, can we request to have a workspace in the downtown lab if that is more accessible, considering the transit pass is not being offered this fall?
That's a very good question. I think that would be difficult, although I understand. Our decisions around space are first and foremost pedagogical. What is the strategy that will give the best educational experience? And we follow 2 principles for that. The first is that we think that it's important for the students in a particular studio, which is 15 students. A studio section is, for those of you that are new, a studio is about 15 students per instructor. So in architecture, in any given year, we would have 4 or 5 sections, each with their own instructor. For planning, there would be 2. And then in landscape architecture, there's typically 1. There's 15 students, 30 students, 60 students, more or less. And so we wanted to make sure that at any one time, all 15 students in that section were resident together, if they were all, assuming that they were all there. It does little good in terms of that peer-to-peer informal learning if you're the only landscape architecture student in a group of architects, say. It would be interesting in its own right, but it wouldn't be that same kind of classroom experience where you are able to, you're all going through the same courses, you have the same questions, the same projects, the same problems, both in lectures and in the studio courses. The second principle that we had is that we wanted to bring a junior class, and a senior class. So think of it as a studio or a student workspace will have 30 desks in it. 15 of those will be occupied at any one time. One studio section. That one of those studio sections will be an early year, a junior year, and one of those sections will be a senior year. So that means that the 30 people that are in the classroom that are able to be physically distanced in that space are one complete section of one year and one complete section of another year, and they're both in the same program. We're still working out exactly who's going to be downtown and who's going to be on campus, but we have to follow those two things first. I imagine that there will be some reorganization within the first week of class well, actually, let me back up. We will be sending out, Jess Alder will be sending out a survey to find out which students are planning to be in Calgary and which of our students will definitely not be here. Right now, we're planning to have capacity for everybody in the school. If everybody shows up, we can accommodate this. We know that there'll be some percentage, I have no idea what it will be, that won't be able to be there. So that will create some excess capacity. Then we'll have those students who decide, even though they're here, that they don't feel comfortable working in the space. There will also be students who may not have an appropriate workspace at home and really need to be in the studio more often. In which case then, once we know what our capacity is, and we see what everybody's individual circumstance is, we will try our best to accommodate the specific needs of as many people as possible. But you have to understand, we've got 350 spaces. There's a lot of variables in the air, and we will do our best, but I can't guarantee that we're going to meet everybody's needs. The most important principles, first of all, are being together in a class, having that junior, senior class piece, and then it would be for those students that don't have internet connections or have rented a room and don't have a space other than a bed in order to work, they would then be slotted into something. So we'll have to see, but we will do our best.
The next person has kind of a question that's already been addressed. It's whether the student desk workspaces will be shared or designated only for one student. You said they were only for one student, right? And then the person also asked if things would be disinfected between uses.
Yeah, so we're working on those protocols as well. There will be some expectation for students to disinfect some portion of it. We're not exactly sure, but and then what level of cleaning we can expect from administration, and then what do we need to backfill in. So we'll be working that out over the course of the next 6 weeks, and we'll have those protocols in place when we come. But I would imagine that I know if it was me, I would want to take a wipe and just clean off my desk surface and my chair arms before I sat down, just to be extra safe.
And Joy also had a question that came up a little bit earlier. Are the M2s going to be downtown?
We don't know that yet. Sorry.
And then the next question is from Saba. Can international students actually study online because we don't have a visa yet? Also, how can we troubleshoot our designs online? Yes.
Okay. So yes, you do not need to have a visa in order to be able to attend classes remotely. So that's a great thing. That's a real bonus. And so that takes that off of the table. In terms of troubleshooting, I'm assuming what you are talking about is the design review process. That will be the same for everybody. Everybody will have their design reviews done online using Zoom and some other digital programs that allow the instructor to draw on your drawing and to have an interaction. We've discovered when we moved online in the spring that was actually a pretty effective way of having a desk crit. Typically at a desk crit, you would be sitting looking at your computer and the faculty member would be pointing at it, or you might have printed something out and you would be drawing together on that. The ability to actually draw on a computer on computer drawings seems to work quite well. So there will be, and this is where it doesn't matter whether you're in Calgary, sitting in your studio space, or in some remote city. everyone will be interacting with their studio critics online. There won't be in-person desk grits. There's no way to be physically distant sitting next to somebody drawing on the same piece of paper.
Tegan has a question. For those of us who are not perhaps living in Calgary, but could commute on their designated student workspace days, would a workspace still be made available for them?
Absolutely. Yep. No, that's if you're somewhere close and you can come in, then you should you're just like any other student. And it doesn't mean that if you're here and you don't use it regularly, that then you lose it. We have the spaces, they're designated for you to be able to use.
Zeal has a question, which I think you just answered. For international students to start the classes online, do we need to get student permits before starting?
No.
Sarah wants to know, will we be getting information on computer technology specs and requirements?
Absolutely, you will. And those will be coming from the 2 associate deans. And there will be a list of equipment, suggested equipment, software, as well as I mentioned around the workshop, various things that you should be expecting so that you have an opportunity before classes start to be able to source that. I have to say that the laser cutters and 3D printers, all of that is, I mean, I think I would be surprised if there was a city that did not have access to a makerspace where you were able to access that equipment, and your accessing of it will be the same as the students accessing it in Calgary, because they'll be submitting files and receiving the raw material back in the same way.
The next question is from Mia, and I'm not sure if you'll have the answer for this, John. As per the transit passes, I attended the first info session with Jennifer, and she advised that we will in fact be receiving our UPass and student ID card, and that the fee will be waived. Can you please clarify?
I'm sorry, I can't. I don't know. That's a level of detail that I don't have. So, but I think Nicola, if we can just mark that down, we will find that out for everybody, and we will distribute in a mass email what the answer to that is.
For sure. The next question is from Ava. How can remote students work as teammates? Do you believe remote students can have the same quality of experience of work studios?
Yes, yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm glad somebody asked it. What's interesting about this time is that it actually mimics global practice in many ways. If you think about the way in which architects, planners, and landscape architects work, we regularly have a site in one city. We have a client in another city. We have a consultant working in another city. We might even be in an office where we have multiple team members in the same office, in the same company, working in different places around the world. Not uncommon at all. So this is actually an environment that you will certainly be practicing in. Absolutely, you will be practicing in this kind of world to some level or not. So yes, it is very possible to do that. The difference is that we're learning we're experiencing maybe for the first time how to teach this way, but the tools are there, and there are, Zoom is there from a visual point of view. There are drawing tools to share. There are multiple ways in which team members can collaborate. And so it actually is it's a really valuable learning opportunity, and unexpected, albeit, but a valuable learning opportunity for you in future practice. This is the future of global practice as offices get larger and as projects become more complex. It's also something that there's a kind of harmony, or what's it called? It might be a vicious circle, but it's a circle nonetheless. If you have, if you have an office in North America, you have an office in Europe, and you have an office in Asia, you can basically take a drawing and it will be worked on, or a project, and it will be worked on 24 hours a day, so that you finish your work. By the time you come back in the next day, 2 other people will have spent the equivalent of 16 hours on the project. that sounds a little vicious, but it is a reality, and it is something that that is exciting to contemplate. I will tell you that we have 2 new hires in the architecture program this year that are unable to come to Calgary, and they will be teaching. One from Las Vegas. He's a faculty member at UNLV in Las Vegas, and another, Alicia, is currently located and has been teaching for several years in London, England. And so she'll be remote teaching in and bringing her expertise. Both of them will be bringing their networks of international colleagues alongside the international networks that all the rest of us have developed into the classroom.
Next question is from Ruth V. For the design studio, will all remote students be under one instructor?
Well, I'm sorry, will which?
Will all remote students be under one instructor?
We are thinking about that. We're looking into that. Until we get our survey back, I'm not sure. And we're also not sure what is the best way to proceed. Is it better to have everybody that is remote, or should it be blended? That doesn't come down to a question of interaction with faculty, because everything's going to be online. It's more, it may more have to do with a question of time zones than anything else. My sense is that that's probably not going to be the case, and that we will blend people across the studios.
Next question is from Ruth. When we are there, will we have to wear masks?
That's really a question for the Ministry of Health more than it is for me. But I would say that while working at your desk, no, that you will be physically distanced from your colleagues in an effective way, so that that's not required. Where their masks may be required is we are setting up some other activity spaces and some assembly rooms for models. So there, those sorts of things. Anytime, just like when you go outside now, if you're in a space where you're not able to physically distance, you're expected to wear a mask. Would be the same kind of thing. But you're not going to be sitting there at your desk wearing a mask.
Can you elaborate more on model making and facilities needed for international students who opt for remote learning?
Sure. So the instructors are recalibrating their course expectations. So to moderate the number of models that are being built. If you're new to design education, to design disciplines, we work primarily, all of us work primarily in 3 dimensions, but because of the digital rendering and modeling tools that we have, most of that is done virtually. So you're drawing in 3-dimensional space and rendering, doing all of that. Occasionally, you'll print out a physical model of something in order to be able to get another perspective on it. Sometimes that's for a final presentation. Sometimes it's for your own study model to be able to look at things, because there is something about having a 3-dimensional thing in front of you rather than seeing a 3-dimensional model on the screen. And so the models play a secondary role in your design exploration and your design presentation. And we are going to moderate that again 1 step, because we know that it's going to be a little more cumbersome to not be able to run the 3D printer yourself and see if it's working, or the laser cutter, and get direct feedback. And if something goes off the rails, you can stop the machine and start it again if you were in the workshop. If you're working remotely, internationally or domestically, or you're working in our studio space, you'd submit the files, you wait for them to be printed out, whether it works or not, and then you'll get it back. And then there's a fair bit of handwork that's done to assemble the pieces. Basically, with 3D printing, a lot of the times you're printing out components that then you you hand glue together and you file them and put them all together. So really, whether you're an international student, a domestic student working remotely, or a student working in Calgary at the studio, the experience will be very much the same. And we will be setting up some communication around what you should be looking for in terms of a 3D printer and a laser cutter, not to go out and buy, obviously, but just to be able to rent as needed from a makerspace, to be able to submit your files and get them back, kind of like submitting something for photocopying or printing.
From Jessica, what is going to happen with the study abroad semesters, specifically the LA trip?
Yeah, I have a sinking feeling that Los Angeles isn't going to happen this year. That's the course that I teach in January. Just looking at the news and thinking about things, I just don't think that Los Angeles is in the cards for January. Our plan is that, well, our goal, and this was before we actually had COVID hit, is that all of our study abroad programs are moving to the spring summer semester. It's very unfortunate that the one that we had planned, the study abroad that we had planned for fall of this year, which would have been the last time that we had run the course in the fall, going to Tokyo and to Barcelona, had to be canceled because of the situation that's here. The university made that decision that they were not going to allow study abroad programs. So that's really unfortunate. So the next opportunity will be in spring summer. We're hoping that things will be stabilized sufficiently that we're going to be able to do that. Nobody knows at this point, but the goal is, and hopefully that's far enough out that we will be able to do that, and we are proceeding with that as our expectation and planning for that. Oh, you're on mute, Nicola.
The next question is about computer labs. Will the computer labs library be available for student use? How will the university ensure all students have access to the internet and computer programs they need from home?
Right. So yes, what we did in the spring of this year is that we made the computer lab remote, so students could remote access into the machines that are in the computer lab and access the specialized software that they need to be able to run that. So that solves that problem, and we're going to continue that this year. So particularly for planners, the large scale and landscape architects, the GIS capacities or software and the large data sets that get moved around will be happening through the workshop, and everyone that needs access to that, whether they're in 2160, the CBD lab, or somewhere else around the globe, will be able to remote into those computers as needed. We will be developing a protocol around access for that, so that it doesn't interfere with teaching, and make sure that there's equitable access. In terms of other software, and computers, the architecture program has a requirement that everyone must have a laptop capable of running equipment or running the software that's required. I don't believe that's the same, Mary Ellen, in landscape and planning, but I think, sorry, go ahead.
It is.
It is?
Yes, it's for,
okay.
All students are expected to have access to a computer, to have their own computer, and that's why the computer specs are being sent out. The issue is, of course, when it's their own individual internet connection wherever they are, home internet, etc. That becomes sometimes an issue.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You can get internet, then with remote access into the university's computers, then you don't have to have the software. You just have to have your computer and an internet connection. We did have a problem last year where a few students didn't have them. They were supposed to and they didn't. So that's where we tried to help out. And again, that's not a critique. For financial reasons, some people weren't able to do it, and they were able to use the universities. This year, you can't use the universities. You have to have your own in order to connect with the university. So, and again, the specs are ready to be sent out as part of the orientation process.
That's right. That's right. Next question. Thank you, Mary Ellen.
We've got a few more questions. I know we're starting to run low on time. Will the computer labs library be available for student use? How will the university ensure all students have, oh, did I get that one already?
I think we've already answered that
Okay,
one.
sorry. Will we be updated as soon as possible on the winter term if we will need to move to Calgary? Will there be an option to continue online if it's our last semester?
Yeah, that again is going to be a university decision. I can tell you that the university is very mindful of the disruptions that suddenly, saying in December, okay, we're all going back, right? I mean, so any decisions that will be made with a student focused for what's best for the students and how do we minimize disruption and unknowns. So at this point, we don't know what we're going to be doing in the winter term, but I do know that the university's made a commitment that they are going to, they're working on scenarios now. It obviously depends greatly on what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And as we've seen just in the last couple of weeks, spikes happen as soon as you drop your guard, and we just won't know what's going to happen. But I can tell you that the university will to the best of its ability take an approach that is student-centric and does not unnecessarily, tries as best as possible not to unnecessarily disadvantage anyone. All of those decisions are things that are outside of the school's control.
Question from Sulika. Since classes are online, will there be any arrangement to introduce and interact with my fellow classmates who will be studying the same course? Yes,
the Students Association, and I see Dimitri is on the line, is actually working on some opportunities for socializing and that, and then there will also be within the classes, there will be we'll making instructors will be making specific going to specific lengths to create that kind of informal social interaction. Dimitri, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, one thing in particular we're doing is setting up like a mentorship program where incoming students will be able to connect with returning students. And so that'll be sort of a more personal sort of way that, you can connect and ask questions that are best suited for someone who's just sort of done the experience in that way. And then we'll also be looking at ways to set up more inter-class sort of social things or just more general social things. So yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Thanks, Dimitri.
Question from Saba. Can anyone be online teacher assistants or research assistants this term? Also, can we defer our program and start in fall 2021?
I'm sorry, what was the first question?
Is it possible to be a TA or a research assistant this term? And then is it possible to defer your start to the following fall?
Right. So the answer to the first question is yes, we are hiring teaching assistants and GATs and research assistants just as we would any other time. Again, we can manage, and we're actively doing research and completing all of the things that we would normally complete online. So yes, there are there are definitely those opportunities for our students. And then the idea about deferral. Now that's a question. Maybe I'll ask Mary Ellen and Catherine. Is there a policy around deferral yet? Are we going to allow deferrals? Maybe we haven't decided that.
No, I mean, we've always offered deferrals. That didn't just happen because there's a pandemic. Even in years without pandemics, people have asked for deferrals. Everything is considered on an individual basis. But we are encouraging people not to defer just because of the pandemic, because we really are, I think, based on our experience in ending the term last year, we've had great success, I think, in enabling the delivery of courses remotely, via Zoom. I think certainly again, even when there isn't a pandemic, people have had to defer for family reasons or pregnancy or a financial, multiple reasons. So they're considered case by case, but really I think we're trying to encourage people not to defer just because of COVID. We are on top of this, and I really think that don't be scared. We're all in this, and we've had some experience with it, and we know what our limitations are and what the opportunities are, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But again, if you have other family or personal issues that are affecting you directly, then we will absolutely, in confidence, deal with this on a case-by-case basis.
That's right.
That's the bulk of our questions in the chat, John. If you need to wrap up, I know we're close to 3.
Okay. Well, I can, maybe I'll ask Catherine, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Just would like to welcome everyone, and maybe to point at the outreach. We will have a website that we're working on that's for an outreach that you'll start to be able to, Vita, maybe you can tell us when a bit more, but that will start to answer any questions, put all the information on, and to start some of the social aspects, so there's more of a virtual community that's going on. And I think in addition to the student mentorship, last year also when we went online, we did reviews between classes. So we're very aware that you end up meeting people and getting feedback from not just instructors, but from each other. And it worked quite well. So.
Just want to follow up on that by saying we have literally 2 months to the first day of class. And even though it's not visible, Catherine is leading the orientation and outreach committee. We have several task groups of faculty members that are working together collectively to address issues in terms of course redesign and in terms of many of the questions that you've asked today. There's going to be further meetings. I mean, this is all rolling out over the next 2 months. So this is not your only chance to contact us. I mean, we're going to be together for hopefully the next 2 or 3 years. So there's multiple opportunities evolving over the next couple of months before we actually begin our first class, where we're going to be in communication with you. And you're more than welcome to communicate with us. You have our email addresses through the website. We can set up Zoom meetings. We will be inviting you to program-specific and year-specific and even course-specific Zoom meetings in advance of the first day of classes. So this is really just the first touch. And Catherine was gracious enough to say the formal welcome, as was John. And again, we really just think about how would things normally happen. Well, you'd normally go to class. Well, we're normally going to do that, except we're going to do it via technology. We're going to do everything that you would normally be doing literally remotely via Zoom. And the Students Association and Dimitri have been fabulous in working together with us on the orientation and outreach in terms of getting it from the student perspective. So again, please feel free to communicate with us over the next couple of months, as we'll be communicating with you, so that by the time the first class rolls around, I think your comfort level will be a lot higher than it probably is today.
Right. Let me add a couple of things that come to mind with those comments. There are some real opportunities that come out of this. For example, our Design Matters lecture series, where we have a lecturer comes to the city each month and presents to our students, and we have a chance for an opportunity to collaborate. That's a big deal. It's a big deal in the life of the school, but it's also a significant ask of someone to fly, take 3 or 4 days out of their busy schedule to fly here, meet with us, and fly back. And so, a number of people that we really like to have come to visit us and to interact with you aren't able to do so. With Zoom, you can actually, that door suddenly is flung wide open. We're now suddenly able to get people that are far too busy to come all the way here to be able to come and interact on a design matters. We're also working in the architecture world. The 12 schools of architecture across the country are talking about collaborating on a single lecture series where each school will be responsible for inviting one person. And then all the students in Canada will be able to participate at the same time. And that would also, for our school, it would obviously be open to all of our students for something like that, which is a great thing. The other thing that I wanted to mention, we just had a meeting this morning around site documentation and site, particularly for planning and landscape, you need to get to a site. You need to be able to see it. And what we've talked about is two things. One is investing in a 3D camera, so that then we've got two students that we've hired over the summer that will be able to go out and document in that sort of 3D, so you can look online, kind of like Google Street View, to be able to, for the projects that would be happening in the studios, to be able to have access to that. That's something, particularly when it's 30 below in January, and you'll be able to go and check on a site characteristic, really invaluable, and something that I would imagine we would continue moving on into the future as we see what this experiment is like. And then also for if there is an in-person site visit, looking at the technology where we can not only capture it capture it with a camera, but also have synchronous live streaming, so that anyone who's not able to be on the site, they might even be living in downtown Calgary but don't feel comfortable because of being immunocompromised coming, that they would be able to live stream into those events. So we're being, as Mary Ellen said, we're working really hard to be very inventive and creative, like architects, planners, and landscape architects always are, to be able to make that happen. So somebody's.
So John, if I can add, the same thing is with courses. We have teachers that aren't necessarily in Calgary that are teaching and interaction. So though some doors did get shut, I'd say more windows have been opened and some walls removed altogether. And we are definitely taking advantage of that. And so the list of where that's happening, even with work integrated studios, will all be coming online as it just gets formalized.
That's right. That's right. Any other comments? All right. Dita, you mentioned that I saw your chat that there was the website, a beta version of the website's up.
Yep, we launched a beta version this morning. So I think all of the, I just kind of wrote it into the chat just in case you missed it. It is 3 o'clock. So any of the questions that were answered, we're going to have a transcript available or some kind of loose version of that, as well as a recording of this town hall session. We'll be putting a bunch of resources up on there, so you can just kind of bookmark that site and keep an eye on it as we make updates over the next couple of weeks.
All right, and there very well might be another town hall like this, and there'll certainly be there certainly will be program and year-specific opportunities for everybody to get together. So first, let me just close by saying welcome to the School of Architecture, Planning, and Landscape. We are very excited, actually really excited about the coming year and all of the things, the great things that we're going to be able to do together. We welcome you into our community. We're a small school. We're able to be very agile and do some innovative things quickly. And so at times like uncertain times like this, that kind of agility really shines through. And I look forward to meeting you all personally, in person, in 3D, as we like to say. And hopefully that won't be very long, but in the meantime, know that your experience is going to be first rate and that you're going to get an excellent education in whichever discipline that you have chosen to study in. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of the afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.